Okay, Boxing Fanatics, welcome to the 29th episode of the podcast. I'm joined today by Mr. Oscar Pick once again. And yeah, I mean, it's been over a week now since a very historic night, it's fair to say. Terence Crawford outpointing Canelo 115, 112 twice, and then 116, 112 to become three-time undisputed champion. Going into the contest, I think it's fair to say Crawford was a slight underdog. Many people believing Canelo would be too big, which we'll touch on after. But I'm going to start off by saying, yeah, I think Crawford was a fantastic performance, and I feel like he beat Canelo in every department, to be honest, from what I can remember. He was a better boxer. He looked at times physically stronger, and it was just overall just an outstanding performance. And yeah, we have to all give Crawford his flowers really at this point. But anyway, yeah, it's been over a week. What's your reflection on Crawford's win?
Yeah, I think I've just been as impressed as everyone else, really. I was one of the ones who actually picked Crawford ahead of the fight. I
Hmm.
was kind of backing him right from the start, to be fair. I know a lot of people were kind of going back and forth between their predictions. I don't know what you were kind of saying in the lead up, but ever since the fight got announced, I kind of stayed firm with my Crawford pick, and I believed that he would win on points. And to be honest, it actually got to the point where probably about a week before the fight, I was thinking this could end up being a really dominant performance from Crawford. I thought it was actually
Hmm.
going to be quite one-sided, just purely based on the performances that I've seen from Canelo in recent years. I think a
Hmm.
lot of people were quick to say that, you look at the William Skull performance, and I remember a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, he's not going to do that against Crawford, is he?" Which proved to be the case. I think the version of Canelo that we saw against Crawford was a lot better than what we
Hmm.
saw against William Skull, even Edgar Berlanga. To be fair, I think this was a better version of Canelo. He clearly uh, took Crawford very seriously as an
Hmm. Hmm.
opponent.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think I looked at those performances, especially the William Skull one, and I kind of thought to myself, like, would the Canelo that knocked out Caleb Plant, who
Hmm.
broke Billy Joe Saunders' eye socket, would that same Canelo have allowed William Skull to just
Hmm.
dance around the ring and not him not kind of put his foot on the gas? Like
Yeah.
I don't think that would have been the case, and I think we are seeing that Canelo is a deteriorating fighter. Like
Hmm.
he's been on a gradual decline. And I feel like I've sort of picked up on that over the past few fights, past few years. Not a lot. Like, I think a lot of people have as well, but they were still kind of believing, oh, he's going to be too good for Crawford on the night, or at least too big for him, and all the rest of
Hmm.
it. Um, but no, I kind of stayed firm with my prediction, and as I said, I kind of thought that it would be quite a dominant performance. I was actually really impressed with Canelo for making it
Hmm.
not so one-sided, to be honest, because I just thought with Canelo coming, like the signs of deterioration that he's shown in his last few fights, I just thought I couldn't imagine him being sort of as competitive as he was against Crawford, and
Hmm.
he ended up, obviously Crawford was a clear winner, but I still
Hmm.
think that version of Canelo that we saw was still a very good Canelo, who probably would have beaten 99% of super middleweights. Like I would pick him against, like Christian and Billy and all these other guys. I would still pick Canelo to beat these guys. But Crawford is a particularly special talent. I think fighters like him do come around once in a generation, and we've got to make the most of him while he's around because he's going to go down as this Hall of Fame fighter who was perhaps the best of his generation. And I think, he's just incredible. Like there's not really much else you can say for him. Just in terms of his natural um judgment of distance, how he's able to control that range so effectively. I think that's kind of what he did against Canelo, wasn't it? He just kept it all on the outside and kind of picked him off at range, really, because we know Crawford's got the longer reach, even though Canelo's technically the physically bigger guy.
Hmm,
So
hmm.
it was just a very complete performance, and I don't think, yeah, you just can't take anything away from Crawford. I think even though I was picking him throughout the build-up, I still think, beating Canelo, jumping up two weight divisions, this is an incredible achievement, and you can't take that away from him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. To your credit, I do remember you. I think since it was announced, or even before it was announced, I remember you saying that you would back Crawford to beat Canelo, and you were correct. I have to hold my hands up and say I did actually pick Canelo to win in the end. On points, I just thought it'd be closer than what it was, and I thought Canelo would have got the decision by the judges, just because he is, I guess, a more of the cash cow in that, and I just thought Canelo's always had the rub of the green in the judges, and I thought he would just do enough to win. Maybe I thought Crawford would struggle more, but what it turns out is that Crawford, yeah, it was competitive, but I think Crawford was the clear winner. He was the clear winner. I think even the scorecards might have been a tad too close. I mean, I don't know. Maybe 116, 112, maybe it's perfect. But yeah, so hold my hands up. I mean, yeah, Crawford's a very decisive victory, and yeah, an outstanding achievement. What I find most interesting, to be honest, about this fight, and I've always felt this way about kind of Canelo, to be honest, because I think the biggest talking point about this fight was size, and it's always been like this. That was the biggest thing. Like Canelo's gonna be too big, Canelo's gonna be too big, but I don't know. I've never looked at Canelo and thought he's like a massive guy, and I never thought he's like a massive super middleweight, to be honest. And I think this fight, I don't want to discredit Crawford because he still deserves immense credit for his win. But I think this fight it really did show that Canelo is really not a big guy, to be honest. I mean, the guy's I don't know the exact height, but maybe 5'7" and a half, 5'8". And I don't know, to my eye, they look roughly the same size in there. I think Crawford said in a post-fight interview that okay, Canelo's got a bit more of a wider frame, which is true, but I really don't think there's a massive size difference there. I mean, it's difficult because I don't think Canelo could make super welterweight like Crawford did, for example. But if we're just going, basically what I'm trying to say is I just don't think there was a massive size difference based on what I saw in that fight. Maybe Crawford going to mitigate it with his technical ability and stuff, which I kind of find interesting. So in a way, it was kind of the perfect fight for Crawford as well because he wasn't facing a massive guy, and it showed because, like you said, he was able to pick him off, quite easily, and win the rounds. So, I mean, what do you think about the size? I mean, do you think, from your eye, do you think Canelo was a significantly bigger guy? Do you think like it was just Crawford's technical ability that got him the win, or do you think it was maybe a little bit, there wasn't a massive size difference, which also kind of played a factor?
Yeah, yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think there was a size difference, but it just wasn't anywhere near as big as what a lot of people thought it would be. And I think part of that is because Canelo, over the years, he's created this almost illusion where he's, in a lot of the big fights that he's won,
Mhm.
he's won them through using his physical advantages. He's been very imposing in those performances. I think about the Amir Khan knockout, although like a lot
Mhm.
of people don't really read too much into it because Khan was coming up in weight and he was right up against it. I think a lot of people look at that as such a big knockout and obviously a very decisive victory. And part of that is because Canelo was so physically imposing on the night. And I think he's done this in a lot of his fights, even against Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. I just think about that run at super middleweight, which I
Mhm.
think was kind of his, three best performances really.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant. And I think even against them guys who aren't small super middleweights by any stretch of the imagination, Canelo still looked so imposing because that was
Mhm.
a prime Canelo, and he was explosive. He was quite a like well it's not like he's become smaller over the years. It's not like he's actually shrunk, but I feel like when a fighter's in their prime and they're sort of at the peak of their powers, they
Mhm.
almost give this sense that they're quite imposing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah,
but
yeah.
then when they're coming to the end of their career, that and I'm not saying Canelo's like a shadow of himself, but I think he is sort of a somewhat faded version of that
Mm.
Canelo,
Yeah, yeah,
you're not
yeah,
as imposing, you're not as physically impressive. It's
yeah,
just
yeah,
natural. Like when you're coming to the end of your career,
yeah,
you're not going
yeah.
to have those physical advantages that you once had. So I think Canelo's built up this reputation over the years, quite rightly so. But then it's come to a point now where he's just not that same fighter. And I think,
Mm.
when we talk about a deteriorated fighter, we have to, mention the physical deterioration. We have to mention, just not having that same sharpness, which I don't think he has.
Mm.
He clearly doesn't have that same foot speed. It's not like
Yeah,
Canelo was ever like ridiculously fleet-footed, but he would kind of, explode into range and kind of,
yeah, yeah.
he was quite, yeah, explosive in that sense. But he's just not that guy anymore. Like I think a
Mm.
lot of people have made comments where it's like his feet are stuck in cement almost, and
Mm.
I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't go as far to say that because I do think his performance against Crawford wasn't as bad as what a lot of people are making it out to be. But I can see, where a lot of people are coming from. He's just a deteriorated fighter. He's still a very good fighter, but that
Hmm.
version of Canelo can't beat Crawford. It'll be interesting to see, you know, what the version of Canelo, which I believe was at its best, how that
Mm.
one would have got on against Crawford. But obviously, we'll never find out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair point. And it's funny because Canelo's the older guy than Crawford, but I think he is actually no, sorry, the younger guy than Crawford, but he is. Crawford definitely looks the fresher, and I think he's actually deteriorated less, Crawford, over the years. But I definitely get your point. I think Prime Canelo, he was just like a bull, wasn't he? Like Prime Canelo. I'm not saying he still is like a bull in that ring. He still has the ability to really bully his opponents and push them on the back foot. Like you're rightly saying, against that super middleweight run, he was just he's such a yeah. He was just he just reminded me of a bull in there. Like he would just come
Yeah,
forward. You could not push him back. You literally couldn't. And I don't know his body shots were just so they were just fudding. I don't know. It's very easy to say when when a fight loses, oh, okay, they're not the same and all that. But I mean, the last five fights, I think it's clear. Yeah, he hasn't been the same. He hasn't had a knockout. He hasn't been the same. He hasn't been the same guy. So yeah, I mean, I guess it is a mixture. I mean, I think it's fair to say Canelo that wasn't prime Canelo in there, but you could say that wasn't prime Crawford in there either. I mean, Crawford is 37, 38. So it's all it's all hypothetical. At the end of the day, Crawford took the risk. Crawford went up two weight divisions. He went into Canelo's backyard pretty much and got the win. In terms of Crawford, what does this do for his legacy? Because I think Crawford's kind of, and I wrote this in my preview. I don't feel like he's ever really got the credit he like really deserves. He's never had the kind of, he's never had a, he's never been like a really like a household name really in boxing. Like he's not made the money that, for example, Canelo has. Anthony Joshua has. Despite probably being more talented than some of the best pound for pound fighters in the world. So I feel like he's never really had that. Even the Spence fight. I remember when he went prior to the or after the Spence fight, he said that he was a struggle for him to get that fight. People didn't want. He basically struggled to get the fights he really wanted throughout. So with this victory, in your opinion, where does this put Crawford? Like, I mean, on paper, so I think it's 42-0, I believe it is. Three-time undisputed super middleweight champion. Are we talking about? I don't know. Are we talking about just all-time great? Are we talking about Hall of Fame? Where do you put him after that victory? I guess I can't even think of a weight division because he's in three weight divisions. But I guess just as a fighter overall, where do you put him? I mean, is it too early to put him in? I don't know. It sounds crazy to say, but is it too early to say, okay, this might be one of a top 10 all timer? Is it fair to say, or what do you think?
I think he'll definitely be known as an all-time great. Whether that puts him in the top 10 or not, I'm not quite sure. I'm not, like I'd never go quite far back and come up with quite a conclusive list before you end up, trying to
Mm,
shoehorn Crawford in there. But, I think he is quite simply one of the greatest fighters of all time.
mm,
However loose that statement sounds, I think it's perfectly fitting of a fighter and
mm,
an athlete like Crawford. And yeah, I think, in terms of his resume, because a lot of people poke holes in it, the fact that he hasn't got the names on his record that, a lot of other greats have.
Mhm,
And part of that isn't his fault because I
mhm.
think we all know now that he got frozen out in that welterweight division for a long time.
Yeah,
He couldn't
yeah,
get, the big fights. And obviously his runs at lightweight and super lightweight, he was beating all the top guys, but he could only beat who was put in front of him. So even though
yeah,
like Ricky Burns, Victor Postal,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
Julius Ndongo, that they're not going to be known as all-time greats. Like they were still the top guys of his
yeah,
division,
yeah,
and he was
yeah.
still becoming undisputed champion. So I think you have to just, give him an enormous amount of credit for that. And I think one of my biggest gripes when I hear people, try and underplay Crawford's achievements is when they say, "Oh, the version of Spence that he fought, that was the Spence who had the car crash and he wasn't the
Mm,
same fighter." And I'm like, this was the Spence who, yes, he had the car crash, but he came back and fought Danny Garcia, beat him comfortably in a really
yeah,
good, like solid performance. And it was also a Spence who, at the time, people were saying was way too big for Crawford, who,
yeah, 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 yeah,
too good for him. And Crawford was, as far as I'm concerned, he was a bit of an underdog in that fight. I
yeah.
always knew he'd win, but I think that victory alone, that was one that really kind of cemented his legacy for me, the Spence one.
Mm,
And I hate to see people kind of downplay that because it was
mm,
such a good win and it was so dominant as well,
yeah, yeah,
which just
yeah,
made it even more impressive. And then obviously jumping up and fighting it, beating Israel Madrimov, and
yeah,
now Canelo. And I think again, people are going to try and poke holes in the Canelo fight. People like, I've already said myself, like this isn't the Canelo who was, is at his best.
mhm.
But I think, you can't ignore that fact because we can see it, it's clear as day. It's not the best Canelo Alvarez, but it's still a Canelo who was, the undisputed super middleweight champion who
Yeah, yeah.
prior, obviously he lost to Bivol, and I did want to kind of talk about the Canelo slide after losing to Bivol because I think there's something a little bit more to it than just his body kind of breaking
Mm,
down. But I think with Canelo's dominance at super middleweight, I think prior to Crawford fight, he was unbeaten at that weight and fought,
mm,
beat a lot of great guys.
yeah, yeah.
Given his dominance at 168, I think again, Crawford, he just deserves, as much credit as possible for that. And that's another legacy defining moment for him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, Canelo. I mean, even though his wins haven't been good the last, I mean, even though his performances haven't been that good, he's still, there's still some decent names on that resume, in the last five years or so. Obviously, people are always going to say that he's been ducking David Benavidez, and people could argue based on that loss to Crawford, maybe we know why. I mean, that's obviously a completely different fight, but um, I guess that's another hypothetical one. That's another hypothetical one. Um, but yeah, I mean, after the Bivol defeat, maybe he just hasn't been the same guy. Maybe he just has not been the same guy. I mean, Bivol beat him. I'm trying to think who beat him in better fashion, Bivol or Crawford. I think Bivol probably done a bit more damage because he was just a bigger guy. He had Canelo on the ropes a bit more, but Crawford maybe arguably outboxed him even more than Bivol did potentially. I don't know. I'll have to watch both fights again. Whatever the case, they both beat him convincingly. A comparison I'd like to discuss actually is because obviously Crawford is compared a lot of this guy is Floyd Mayweather. Obviously, Floyd Mayweather finished his career 50-0. In your mind, at this stage, who do you think? Obviously, Crawford is still going. I don't think he's going to reach 50-0 like Mayweather. I don't think he has enough time. Um, I'll go first and I say I think Crawford is a better fighter than Mayweather overall. I think Mayweather is a better, I guess, money maker. Hence, money Mayweather. I think Mayweather has played the game better throughout his career. Hence why he made so much money and he's. But I think if we're talking about as a fighter, I think Crawford is the better fighter. He's always fought the best in his division, whereas you could argue Mayweather hasn't always done so. But what do you think about that? If we're comparing Mayweather and Crawford, do you agree, or do you think that it's a bit closer, or would you say Mayweather's even a better fighter than Crawford's?
But to be honest, as much as I've been kind of waxing lyrical about Crawford, I'd actually argue that Mayweather's slightly better than him. Like, obviously,
Really?
it's close. It's close, but I'd say Mayweather, because let's not forget Crawford. he's so kind of well-rounded. Like he's so advanced in every department, but he does tend to get hit a decent amount. Like the
Mm.
punch stats do show that. Whereas I think Mayweather, like what kind of made him particularly special was the fact that he was so defensively skilled. Like he'd hardly ever get hit clean, and so much so that a lot of people will look at that shot that who was it that sort of Shane Mosley,
So
the shot
Mosley,
that
yeah,
Shane
yeah,
Mosley landed against him, and people
yeah.
be like, oh, like that was the moment where Floyd Mayweather like almost got rocked, or like he almost got dropped or whatever. But then that kind of shows you that air of invincibility that he had,
Mhm.
because obviously it was a good shot, and it like he got caught clean,
Mhm.
but he wasn't really in a whole like load of trouble. But he's such a sort of skilled fighter defensively that he just those types of shots you just wouldn't really see get landed against him. So like I think that for me was part of his kind of aura and his kind of magic in that sense. But it's very close between them. I think I'd
Mhm.
say Floyd Mayweather in terms of achievements as well. You'd probably argue that he might have even like he might be ahead of Crawford
Really?
in terms of just those standout wins against like great fighters who he kind of beat on his rise coming up.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think Mayweather's probably has bigger names overall in his resume. That's a good point. But I guess Mayweather's never. I don't think, to my knowledge, don't think Mayweather's ever been undisputed in the weight division. I might be incorrect, let alone a few. So that's why I'd put Crawford. But no, I get what you're saying. Mayweather, to be fair, Mayweather probably does have the better names on his resume overall. Obviously, Mayweather's got Canelo as well on his resume as well. Um, Finally, what would you like to see both guys do? So Crawford, they're both are towards the end of their career. I mean, for me personally, I would like to see just both guys. I don't know, both guys retires. But no. You know what, For Canelo, I would like to see Canelo. Obviously, I'm in the UK. I would like to see Canelo fight in the UK before he retires. I would like to see. Here's a fight I would actually like to see. Probably will split opinion. If Eubank Jr. beats Conor Ben, I would like to see Eubank Jr. versus Canelo. I think at this stage of their careers, I think I would be. I still back Canelo, but I still think it'd be like an entertaining fight, and I'd like to see Canelo, come to either the O2 or whatever, and just sell it out. I think that'd be nice because he's boxed all around the world. UK, UK's got a massive fan base, and I'm sure there's a South American community here who'd like to see him fight again. For Crawford, I don't know. I guess if we were just talking about legacy building, I would like to see him. I think he has mentioned this. I guess capture a world title middleweight and become undisputed middleweight if he really wants to, and become a four-time undisputed champion if he really wants to. Really add. But what do you think? What would you like to see both guys do at this stage?
Yeah, I think Canelo fighting in the UK would be interesting for sure. Obviously, the Hamza Shiraz fight has been mentioned, and to be
Mm,
honest, I don't think Hamza Shiraz would have all of a sudden lost interest in that because I think it's still a big money fight for
yeah, yeah,
him,
fair
and
enough.
and
Yeah.
it's obviously one that Turkey would back as well. But I agree with you. I'd rather see the Chris Eubank Jr. Canelo fight.
Mm,
To be honest, I think
yeah,
I don't know. I think in terms of the build up and
yeah,
just
100%.
even the fight in general, like obviously you'd have to back Canelo, but then like I mean, obviously Chris Eubank Jr. is no spring chicken. Like
Mm,
they're both sort of touching on well, I think Canelo's like 34, 35 or something,
yeah,
but
yeah,
but
yeah.
but Eubank's just turned 36, so it's
Mm.
almost like a battle of the you know, battle of the sort of the older statesman, or so to speak. But
Mm-mm.
yeah, I think that would be an interesting one for Canelo, and then Crawford. If he was to fight anyone at middleweight, I think him against Janibek is a really interesting fight.
Mm.
To be
Oh
fair,
yeah.
that's a tougher fight than Canelo. I think him
Mm.
against Janibek because avoided fighter as well. Janibek, like he's so good, he's so talented, but um he's not got those names on his record,
Yeah.
similar to what Crawford has had for a lot of his career. And I think that would be a really interesting fight, but I just don't think there's enough money involved for, promoters and broadcasters to get in to be interested in that fight at all. I don't think
Hmm.
in terms of the money that both fighters would demand, I just don't think it gets made, to be honest. I don't think the money's there for it. But it would be a really interesting matchup for sure. I'd love to see that one, to be honest. Other than that, there's not really anything I'd want to. I don't think Crawford's got really anything else to prove. And if he was to win a world title at middleweight, it would only be the only one that would interest me is Janibek. I wouldn't, I think he'd comfortably beat Erislandy Lara. I
Mm.
think he'd probably comfortably beat Carlos Adames as well. The only one who I could see giving him a few things to worry about, a few problems potentially, is Janibek. So that's
Mm.
the only one I'd be wanting to watch, to be honest.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, that would be interesting. Janibek would be a good fight, to be fair. But then it's one of those ones, I guess, that I don't know, high risk, low rewards, maybe, because Janibek's not a massive name. But I guess time will tell. Let's see if Crawford continues or not. I think both are going to continue. That's my hunch, but we will see. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys, for listening. If you like this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.